this society, I have come across different people with a different nature. So some people are very shocking. Their nature is very shocking. So I have decided to make this video on this topic. The topic is some people so greedy. This is 38th video. So some people so greedy. This is my topic for discussion today. So people with a different nature and different behavior are seen in this society. I come across different people with a different nature and different behavior and with a different taste, different fashion. Some people suffer with a specific type of syndrome called greed. We call it greed. It is a syndrome, a type of syndrome, type of specific unique behavior seen in the people. So with this kind of syndrome of greed, people try to acquire a thing more and more in their life without any break. Continuously they try to fulfill their desire to have it more and more without any stop. So this is their behavior. We call it as syndrome of greed because it is like a disease, addiction, where the people cannot give up. So they go on acquiring, and they never stop acquiring the thing they want. So a particular thing, say maybe health, wealth, maybe property, whatever it is. So once they are addicted to this kind of habit of acquiring, they never give up. At the cost of their life, they continue to acquire, gain, get the things more and more. Greed is one of the highest forms of motivation. Once a person gets addicted to a particular item, he develops greed for it and goes on acquiring it in his life without any stop. They continue to acquire it, they continue to get it done, they try to get it somehow at some cost or the other, at the cost of their life also. Sometimes they try to get it. This is the nature of greed. We call it a syndrome of greed. Greedy person is very much attached to a particular thing. Greed is an inner condition which makes a person addicted to such an item and conditions that person to make all out effort to acquire it without any limit. They go on acquiring it without any limit. Greed is an excessive desire for resources, especially for property such as money, lands, houses, immovable properties, mobile properties, assets such as gold, silver, diamonds, and ornaments. So all these things they get addicted to acquire. People have this kind of syndrome of greed and they try to acquire all this type of things, properties, diamonds, gold, silver, ornaments, houses, whatever it is. There is no limit for it. So excessive greed is harmful to the individual and his family members also. Yeah, excessive greed means syndrome like this. Syndrome of greed is very harmful to the person, his health and his family members, health of the family members. Yeah. Excessive greed results in accumulation of wealth with a few individuals and their families, which results in a societal conflict and fight between individuals and their families, leading to the development of enmity and rivalry between individuals and their families. So the people will continue to acquire properties, houses, and gold, silver, money. So this will lead to this kind of excessive greed will result in the development of conflict, enmity, rivalry between the person who is acquiring, the members of the family, his family, and other members, the members of other families in the society, other friends who are witnessing his greed, the way he is acquiring the properties, the way he is gaining the profits, the way he is trying to acquire the gold, assets, houses, the friends, his friends, neighbors, his relatives will witness all this, his activities of this kind of greedy activities, and they will develop evil enmity with him. They will become very envious about his activities, very jealous of him, and there will be conflict in relations, conflict in associations, conflict in the companion, with the friends, with the relatives, association with the relatives and friends. There will be conflict. So that's how rivalries develop. So the people, the friends, the relatives become envious, jealous of his property, his assets. So excessive greed makes a man or woman very selfish and self-centered. It makes greed, syndrome of greed makes a man or woman self-centered, very selfish. They don't care about the others, the ambition of others, the wishes of others. They don't care about the attitude of the other persons, the interest of other persons, maybe relatives, maybe friends, maybe neighbors. They don't care. Simply they neglect the interest of others, and they go on acquiring the properties, assets, etc. on their own, and for their own interest, selfish motto is developed in them. This is called greed syndrome, or syndrome of greed, and it's a very harmful. In classical Greek thought, it is referred to as pleonexy, which means an unjust desire, and it was delved deep in the works of Greek philosophers Plato and Aristotle. It was well investigated, explored by the philosophers, Greek philosophers like Plato and Aristotle, which can be seen in their works, which can be witnessed in the works of Plato and Aristotle, who are the Greek philosophers, about this unjust desire, which is called greed. The imperial politicians and historical writers opined that it was the greed for wealth and power the Roman Republic was collapsed. This is history on record. For the simple greed of wealth and power, the Roman Republic was collapsed. The rulers had this kind of greed of, for wealth and power, which resulted in the collapse of the Republic, Roman Republic. The greed brings in the person the selfishness that will have a great influence on the nature and attitude of a person. And this will result in the development of negative tendencies in the human behavior. So, the people who have this kind of greed, they develop negative tendencies, they lose positive tendencies, they develop negative tendencies uh, with regard to everything. They always become self-centered. They think of their own interest. They don't bother about the interest of others. Therefore, one should make sincere attempt to suppress these negative tendencies when he is infected with this syndrome of greed. So, one must try to give up this kind of syndrome, get rid of this syndrome of greed, and try to give up the negative tendencies. You don't find a greater enemy of a man than greed, which will engulf the man in totality, and he loses life ultimately. So that is the result of syndrome of greed. He loses himself. in acquiring the assets, the property. No rich man can consume more food than a poor, and no rich man can have a better sleep than a poor. This is a proverb, one can say, a common proverb, maxim that goes. So no rich man can consume more food than a poor, and no rich man can have a better sleep than a poor. I mean, rich people cannot eat more than a poor man eats. Rich people can't have good sleep more than the poor people who can have good sleep, sound sleep. So greed syndrome manifests in a person when his desire to possess money or wealth is much more stronger than he desires to use it for his needs. So the greedy people, the people who suffer with this syndrome of greed, never try to spend the properties, spend the money they have acquired. So always they are in a mood of acquiring the property, acquiring the money, but they don't want to spend it for their needs also. So this is the bad side of the syndrome of greed. The other side of the greed, syndrome of greed. The syndrome of greed will make a man lose his happiness and suffer with the hunger for money. He will be always addicted for money, so he will be always very thirsty, very hungry for money. So always suffer with the hungry for money, hunger for money. They suffer with hunger for money, wealth, properties, many assets. They suffer a lot with hunger for money. Syndrome of greed may have its genetic predisposition and percolate into generations through, and hence individuals in a family exhibit this kind of compulsive motivation, compulsive behavior to earn more and more at the cost of their happiness and happiness of their loved ones. So at the cost of their life, at the cost of their life of loved ones, they go on acquiring, and according to the scientists investigation, the investigation made by psychologists, philosophers, it is opined that maybe genetic predisposition make the people with men to take up this kind of activity. That means their attitude is motivated. They develop this kind of greedy attitude because it is there in their genome. It is there with the genes, in their genes. That means the genes will guide, mold their behavior in such a way they get addicted to this kind of syndrome of greed and go on acquiring. So it is a genetic predisposition that is there in their genome. The people who are having this kind of behavior, greedy behavior, nature of greediness. So somewhere and somehow they aggressively act and behave in conformity with their excessive selfishness, that is greed. But one thing is certain, ultimately his moral domain will be wounded and he is the victim of this wound. Ultimately he is the loser because he loses everything. He loses time, precious time, he can't enjoy, he can't eat properly, he can't sleep properly. Ultimately he is the victim, he loses himself. So dear viewers, if you like my video, kindly share, subscribe and comment. Thank you very much, dear viewers.